Hello and welcome back to the podcast. As always, my name is Sean Boyce. On the show with me today, I have Chris Ronzio, who is the founder and CEO of Trainual. Hello, Chris. How are you? And thanks for being here.
Hey, Sean, I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And if you would, for both myself and our listeners, please explain to us what Trainual is and tell us a little bit about how it came to be.
Sure. So Trainual is like the playbook for your business. So think of it as if you were to sell the company and had to hand someone the instructions, that would be Trainual. It's the policies, the procedures that every employee needs to know. It's the step-by-step processes, your best practices for how you do what you do. So Trainual came about initially because I was consulting for other small businesses, and I heard everyone saying, they want a playbook, or they want SOPs, or they want people to do things consistently, or they have a turnover problem, or there's a retention issues and unclear roles and responsibilities. And it seemed like all of those problems pointed toward just some clarity on who does what. And most businesses, what they'll do is make a bunch of Word docs or Google docs, or if they get real sophisticated, maybe a Google site. And so I wanted to create something that was easy, accessible, but something any business as they're growing can document what they do. And that's what Trainual does.
Very cool. Sounds pretty important to me. I certainly have been there and can use a product like Trainual throughout my career, I would say.
Well, you can start and sign up now.
Start now, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So our podcast talks a lot about capturing feedback from your customers and your users and making the product better. So we'd love to learn a little bit more from you about how you guys do this. So what at Trainual is your process? How do you guys do it? What does a team look like that helps you with these tasks? As far as like, how do you go about capturing customer feedback for the people that are buying, using, and getting value out of Trainual?
Well, the first thing I'd say, it's evolved a lot since we launched the business. So initially, when I built the prototype of the tool, it was just for my consulting clients. And so the feedback I was getting was face-to-face feedback. I would watch them use it. I would sit with them. I would do the work for them. They would ask questions, and I would figure out how could I automate some of the stuff that I'm having to do as the power user of this thing. So that was like ground zero of feedback. And then slowly we started moving to signing up strangers. And then the feedback was doing demos. And you get a lot of feedback in a sales demo from people that haven't bought yet on what they want, what they value, the right questions to ask. And so you're learning kind of how to pitch the product and what features to prioritize over others, and how you might divide features across plans. And so I think that comes even pre-sale feedback. And then as the business went on, we are a little more sophisticated, and we would, we hired our first customer success rep. And then the customer success rep is the one getting all the feedback. And when we would get either cancellations or support tickets, those things would be customers prompting us to think about certain functionality, and we'd keep them in a list in just a project management system. And we'd have a backlog of ideas to go through. And then as the company got more mature, it transitioned into product, where now we've got, a product manager that's fielding a lot of these things and getting more intentional about requesting feedback before we launch features, instead of just launching something because I want it. Now we'd interview people and find out how they actually interact with the feature. We rolled out a beta program. So then we have beta customers that test things before they roll to production. Then we brought on a QA person. And so I think it's been like a slow evolution of just me sitting side by side with someone until now being much more sophisticated.
Sounds like a pretty natural evolution. Seemed to kind of develop organically, I would say. So talk to me a little bit about like how you capture this feedback in the beginning, how you capture it now. Like, what do you use? What do the processes look like? Do you guys use tools for this? Is it, you keep it relatively lean? Do you have a pretty well-structured process? I'd love to hear a little bit more from your feedback there as far as like how you capture and organize the feedback from customers.
Yeah, we have a very specific process now, but early on we didn't. And I think it's important because when you're first starting out, that's one of those things that you are going to do very messy. Like
Sure.
you're just going to hear feedback, and it's going to go in one ear and out the other. And if you hear it a few times, then maybe you start to remember it and internalize it, and it makes its way into the product without really any intentionality. I remember when I was consulting, I had a product, we were building these internal tools for companies, and the customers, my customers, were paying for the development, and so there had to be some level of sensitivity, like, hey, if one of your employees asks for something, how urgently do you want us to prioritize that? Like, do we do it right away and bill you for it, or do you want us to run it through you? And I remember a few customers giving me like this 3 times rule, where like if 3 people ask for the same thing, then like we should probably do it. And so I think I carried a little bit of that into building Trainual as my own product, where I would hear things from customers, and the first time you hear it, it's kind of this, edge case, and you think, all right, nice idea, but I can't see that applying across the board. And then maybe you hear it a second time and you're like, oh, I've heard that before. And then when you hear it a third time and it keeps coming, then that starts to become at the top of your mental list. And so it's very natural, I think, at the beginning to not have any systems for this. It's just you have so much inside of you that you're trying to build and roll out, that you almost have to trust your gut a little bit at the beginning to build the MVP, to build the thing that you think is most valuable. And then once you've got a product and you've run enough customers through it, you start collecting feedback, and you need to get more systematic about it. So I'll fast forward to now and kind of a couple ways that we do it. So we use one tool that manages feature requests. It's called Canny, Canny. So we have kind of this public feature request thing, and it was a real slick interface where customers could put in a request, people can upvote them. It's got a plugin with Intercom, which we use for support. So our support reps can create feature requests or add people on to requests that are on there. And then we can change the status from something that is, just an idea to it's been discussed, or it's planned, or it's on the roadmap, or it's in progress, or it's been launched. And the people that subscribe to that feature will get updated. And so they get alerts to know that something is ready that they've requested. And we've used that system also to pull together beta customer lists. So if we're going to start working on something and we want to just design it, our UX, UI designers will reach out to those customers and get on phone calls with them. And they'll say, let me watch you struggle through our current product and show me what would be easier. And then they'll go back to their lab and they put together, some clickable prototypes. And then they call the customer back and say, take a look at this inside our design app here, and is this what you wanted, or does this intuitively make sense? And they'll watch them use the clickable prototype, and then they go back to the lab and take another crack at it before it's even in front end development. So our process has gotten, I would say, more sophisticated. We use other tools to track what a person is doing inside the app, so we can actually watch the users' sessions and know how many people are clicking this button and what did they do right before they click that button. And we've watched that more thoroughly. We use another app that is for a net promoter score called Delighted, where people can just generally say if they would recommend the tool, but then it prompts them for feedback from inside the tool, and they can post comments or send us a video. So we use a whole suite of tools now, but it's mostly our product team that is building those out. So I'm not sure, I don't even know them all.
Very cool. A lot of stuff to help. And like you said, it starts organic in the beginning, right? As in like figuring that process out. And then you come upon the things that can help you kind of do it at scale. And I imagine that's where like Canny and Delighted come in. I was I use QuickBooks Online as one of my tools. And I happened to notice the feedback that they were asking for me on one view, and I was inspecting the source or whatever, and it was Delighted. So familiar with Delighted, familiar with Canny, super cool use cases for sure. I imagine have they helped you continue to bring great feedback from customers to the team that's making it all happen at scale, more so than it was previously? And like, at what point did you start to look for or introduce some of these tools?
Well, I think we started introducing them before we were ready to actually take the customer's advice, which is it could be a frustrating thing for your customers when they're submitting feedback and then you're not implementing their feedback. But it's definitely a balance, because there's that old, I think it was like a Henry Ford thing, like it wouldn't have built a car, it would have built a faster horse. That's
Right.
it's so cliche, right? But I think it's so true that customers oftentimes are going to ask for short-sighted solutions because they don't know what else is on the roadmap, and they don't know that this thing that they're struggling with will be solved when you merge those 5 pages together with this new interface that you've been designing for 6 months. And so if you're totally reactive and answering customer feature requests and trying to sprint to get every customer request done that makes sense today, then you're going to lose sight of where the product should be heading further down the line. And so it's a balance. I think it's important to collect that feedback and have a place to put it, but it also shouldn't totally drive the business. You have to drive the business based on where you want the product to go, because you might know something different than your customers. And then you should, I think, more importantly, test whatever you think is right with a handful of customers and get their feedback on that rather than their feedback on your current version.
Absolutely. This concept of experimenting the things that you're thinking about doing and actually getting customer feedback can be so valuable, because it's like, until then, right, we may not know how close our aim is. So I love the fact that you guys have developed this iterative process and have incorporated some of these tools to be able to do it. So I'm curious to learn more about, right, we talked about how you guys capture that feedback using tools like Canny now, doing it at scale. Um, what's the aim like in using tools like Canny and Delighted to make impact at the NPS and stuff like that? Like how accurate would you say the tools have been for you guys when you're, how do you collect the feedback using those tools and then figure out kind of what to work on next?
Well, collecting feedback through those tools is like top of funnel. You're going to get a lot of stuff. If you think about it like a marketing funnel where you've got a bunch of leads at the top and only a small percentage of them turn into customers, it's the same with the feedback you get from your customers. So top of funnel, we want to capture all of those ideas, get them all into our world, try to organize them as best we can. But then the way that they move down the funnel is going to be based on our business goals and the direction we're taking the product. And so we manage our roadmap in a few ways. We've got those top of funnel tools. I mentioned Canny. We also, with Intercom, where we do our support tickets, we tag tickets and put notes on tickets so we can search certain keywords and pull up all the conversations that had to do with a specific feature request or something like that. And then from there, we go into a project management tool. Asana is what we use. And that's what we use to plan, like resource planning with the team and the roadmap of the big features and milestones and delivery dates and when things are going to be designed or code complete or ready for testing, because it gives us an easy way to track the project of each of those features and to collaborate on them. And then when things get into the current quarter, that's kind of when they're being designed and they're going from the designers and testing and to developers and getting estimated points for how long development's going to take, and then we use Jira for the development management. So there's like this funnel of things, where it starts at the top as just a ton of noise and feedback, and then we have to parse through that to get to the things that we're actually developing. I would say there's another thing that we instituted, which is every month we do a product ideation meeting where we invite a representative from every department in the company to come and do this kind of group brainstorm. And every department can suggest 3 features. And so they have to bring their features to the table. They vote on them as a department. They talk about them before the meeting. And then they have to run every idea through this format we have where they talk about, what is this idea? What's the impact of this idea? Like, who will it impact? What's the result here? Is it revenue? Is it churn? Is it engagement? And they're going through kind of the business metrics and then how it ties back to some of our bigger goals for the year. And that's how they present their idea to the rest of the team. And then as a team, whatever the delegates, that are at this meeting get from 0 to 3 votes for every feature. And so we put them all up on the board and we've got, a dozen new feature ideas. We vote on every one. add up all the votes, and now we've got a priority level for these, team led requests, and those things, are taking up a certain percentage of our development team's bandwidth. So it seems very methodical, but like I said, it's taken a while to get to this process.
And that leads me to my next question. So clearly you guys have battle tested your processes and you've got some stuff that works really well. I love the idea about the product ideation meetings. I think that's super cool, super engaging, create some like healthy competition. And then they get to think about things the right way, right? How's this going to impact the company? How does this drive us close to our long-term goals? How does this help the customer? All kinds of stuff before, we go build, right? We can check a lot of those boxes beforehand. My question for you, which other listeners are probably going to be interested in as well too, is what would you recommend for those other kind of SaaS, those other SaaS companies out there looking to incorporate and kind of get to where you guys are now, but maybe aren't quite there yet? Like, what would be kind of best advice you would have to share for them that are hoping to kind of get there at some point?
I think it comes down to your team and your bandwidth, because you can pretty easily look at yourself and say, okay, we're a team of 3 people, or we're a team of 10 people, or we're a team of 30 people. And based on the team size and the bandwidth that you have, you know how much you can allocate to process when it comes to feedback and all this. And so if you're a small team that hasn't put any process into place, then ask yourself, are you having one-on-one customer conversations? Are you at least asking a few people to share their screen and see what they're doing? Because then you can at least get some external perspective to match against your own intuition. So that's step one. If you haven't done that, if you are doing that and it feels like, well, I can't talk to everyone, I've already talked to a few people, then your next stage is probably to collect feedback more at scale, which is setting up some kind of tool. It could even be a Google form, and you email it out to everyone and say, like, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the product. We'll give you a $10 Starbucks card, whatever it is. And then you put a little more energy into building some critical mass of feedback. And if you've already done that and you've got tons of feedback, but you're not listening to it, you're not doing anything with it, you probably need one of those later stage tools that I mentioned to help you prioritize the feedback that you are getting, and run it through a filter of which one of these is going to impact our business. I've seen people draw a grid of, the number of users this is going to impact, and will it, the revenue this is going to bring us, and the urgency of this feature. And you probably just search, I'm sure you could suggest these things better than me, but you plot all the ideas across this grid. How easy are they for you to develop, to implement? If there's something that would take your development team one day, and it could be an add-on for your site that increases your revenue tremendously, like, you should do that thing. That's like that would be plotted in the like best place on the graph. Whereas if it's something that's like, oh, this is going to take us 6 months to redesign, and people are going to be able to toggle a switch so that it goes into night mode, like that, like, that's not bringing a lot to the table. That's like the thing that when you've got too many developers, and you're looking for stuff for them to do, they do. So you've got to analyze the features, and so there's tools to help you do that. So I think it's just a little reflection on where you're at in which stage.
Fantastic. And thank you for sharing. A lot of tremendous value. Thank you for taking the time and sharing those insights with us. I have a couple of questions before we wrap the show. And that's number one, you've mentioned a few already. Feel free to reiterate those, and I can include those links as well too. But what resources would you recommend for those of us out there who are also looking to successfully build and grow SaaS businesses? Books, blogs, any kind of tools, resources, that type of thing.
Yeah, sure. So I mentioned a lot of software tools. So I'll go to the other side of it. The SaaStr podcast was really helpful for me when I was just getting started. And the book Impossible to Inevitable, which is, I think, by the same guy, that was amazing out of the gates. Dan Martell is one of our advisors, and he has a group called SaaS Academy, a great YouTube channel about all the problems that SaaS companies deal with. So that's been really influential. And then I guess we've been producing a lot of this content that is just our path. We're part of what we're doing with Trainual is documenting everything and sharing it. We have a full-time videographer on the team, a full-time copywriter. So we put out tons and tons of content. And so you can follow what we're doing just on my Instagram or our company website and LinkedIn.
Thank you, sir. And I'll link to those in the show notes. And then last question I have for you is who should reach out to you and how can they get in touch?
Uh, Anyone really, if you have questions about scaling your business, I'm happy to answer those. If you send me a message, your best bet is through LinkedIn or Instagram. I check those all the time. And then we have a YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/Chris Ronzio. And that's where we're posting just a ton of useful content. So definitely check that out.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that, Chris. I'll link to that as well. Thank you for being here and sharing our insights with us.
All right. Thanks, Sean.
The Customer Conversations podcast is brought to you by the team at LearnWhy. LearnWhy integrates with all of your customer-facing tools to organize feedback and extract actionable insights. Empower your team to start growing your bottom line today with insights from qualitative data powered by LearnWhy. You can find out more at either learnwhy.co or by emailing our team at sales@learnwhy.co. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Customer Conversations podcast. If you or someone you know has expertise in growth, marketing, or product, please have them reach out to either Sean or Stuart to learn more about becoming a guest on our show. Our team can be reached by email at support@learnwhy.co.